This is just a part of content that I've been sharing on social media. Really, at Resolve, our theme here is authentic, accessible SEO. And really, what we mean by that is we try to be real people. We try to connect with people at a real level. We provide, quality services here, but really accessible as well. So we want this to be, SEO should be something that makes sense to everybody, that you can understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and so on. And so today, we're not just going to say, hey, we got results for a client. We're going to show you, like, this is how we actually got results for this client. This is how you can do the same for yours. So the project that we're talking about today is Arrow Sewing. They are a niche client, so even within a niche. So they're in the sewing industry, but beyond that, they do sewing furniture. So sewing tables, sewing cabinets, sewing chairs. They're looking for help with their content strategy. They had identified that this was an issue. And when you look at kind of the statistics, yeah, over the last year from August of 2022 to August 2023, they had only driven 5 visitors all year to their blog. So the first thing that you want to do when it comes to developing a successful content strategy is to establish goals. So in the case of Arrow Sewing, it was world domination in sewing furniture. That's what our contact always says, is kind of a joke. He's like, yep, we want to dominate the world. But then we want to break that down. What does that actually mean? Really what they were looking for was top of the funnel brand recognition with sewists. So if you Google the phrase sewing cabinets, they were ranking pretty well. People knew them. If you knew you needed a sewing cabinet, you probably know about Arrow. But people who don't know about sewing cabinets, who don't really know about sewing furniture, which even within our own company, we had people who are sewing enthusiasts who didn't know these things existed. They're hard to find and nowhere to be seen. And this is where blog content can really help them. So helping with that, and then ultimately, they want traffic and sales. That's what people are doing SEO for, is to get more money and grow their bottom line. So really what we want to do is always understand what it is you want to accomplish, and then align your SEO and content efforts accordingly. So the first thing that we needed to do was to identify topics. And this is something that Danica and I both work on with our clients. So on my end, pre-sale, this was sitting down with them, understanding their goals, and then doing some of that opportunity analysis to figure out, number one, is content going to help them? Are other brands finding success with content? And then what are some of the initial themes and ideas that we'll talk about? So I recommend using SEMrush or Ahrefs for this. They're both great keyword research tools. You can also use Also Asked to help you create outlines and know what questions you should be asking. Search for the topic that you want to cover. Look at your DA or DR, so your domain authority or domain rating, and then pick a keyword difficulty that aligns with that. Then look for themes that fit together for the same, and you can either figure out, like, are these keywords that would fit well within the same piece, or should these be multiple pieces that fit within the same content pillar? And then last, do these fit in to the initial goal, like we talked about on this slide, and into our marketing funnel? So make sure that these align with what you're trying to do. So let's do some real world examples here. So for this client, for Arrow Sewing, I literally just started out by searching for sewing. Then I got my keyword difficulty sorted out to be about a 49 or less. The reason why I did this was because they're about a 40 on domain rating, according to Ahrefs. So I don't want to be shooting for stuff that is in the difficult, hard, or very hard. We want to stick on the lower end of things, because there's some really good high volume keywords here that we can attain more easily. What's cool here is that you can do a couple things. Number one, it will summarize for you what the main themes are that are being picked up. So when people type in sewing, machine gets searched regularly, patterns, needle, quilt, table, so on. So right away, we're starting to see, like, okay, here's some of the themes that get searched regularly. Also use the questions tab. If you click this button here, it's going to show you questions that people are asking. And the way we think about our content strategies for clients is very question-based. How do I find out what my audience is asking? And how do I answer that with my content? So then we went through and analyzed and looked through all the questions being asked, took notes of those, and organized content topics accordingly there. All right. The main thing to think about here, the main question to ask yourself is, what do people who buy my product ask before they know they need my product? The real problem here is that, like we said earlier, if someone already knows they need a sewing cabinet, they'll probably already know about Arrow Sewing. But if Arrow Sewing wants to introduce to people earlier on or make them aware of their product, that they can have a sewing cabinet that will raise their sewing machine out from the floor, like really cool stuff. They need to get introduced to the brand, and this content is how they do it. Danica, any thoughts on that or things to add on that before we jump forward?
I think typically when clients come to us, they know their money keywords already. They know like what they want to be able to rank for. But I think there's something to be said for having like a broader set of knowledge. Like not everybody knows they need an ergonomic sewing chair. Like certainly, like we talked about earlier, we have a lot of creative people on staff that do sewing projects. They're like, why does my back hurt every single day when I'm doing something fun for me? And it's because we don't have an ergonomic sewing chair. So like, while this particular client might rank for ergonomic sewing chairs, not everybody knows that they need one that does that particular, hobby. So part of what we were trying to do here was to help Arrow rank topically, like to become a topical authority in the sewing space, so that when people are like, oh my God, am I the only person whose back hurts because I'm trying to do a hobby for me, they can find Arrow. And I think we've really established a lot of content for them that puts them in this space to where they're not only ranking for their furniture, but they're an authority in the sewing space, which was not there, 3 to 6 months ago.
Yeah. No, one thing I love you talk about, even in previous things we talked about, is panic questions. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's something that I think is a great way to think about your content strategy.
Yes, I love the panic questions thing. I mean, we've all had those, like, my stomach hurts, why? You type in your symptoms, you're panic Googling, and this is what you go to your doctor with. The same thing happens with, really every problem that you have. It doesn't have to be just like medical. It can be like, why is my sewing machine needle jamming? Like you're like in a panic moment and you're trying to figure out the solutions to those questions. So like, those are the kind of things we really looked for with Arrow in particular. Like we were like, can you bring sewing machine needles on an airplane? Can you, like, why is my needle jamming? Like, what should I get for my, teen who's starting sewing for the first time? Like, utilize these like panic questions, and then you can create really great content that can still like flow to like what your product offering is. So it's like outside of what you sell, but still can bring people in.
Yeah.
To the funnel that to get into.
And to your point, that fits exactly with what their goal was. We go back here, top of the funnel brand recognition. Like this is how you get in at the top of the funnel with sewists. Like they wanted to get in front of this audience. Sewists are the kind of people who ask, can I bring a sewing needle on an airplane? Because they love sewing so much. They want to do it while they travel. It's like, yeah, these are the kinds of people who end up buying a sewing cabinet or sewing table. So it's like, yeah, like just great examples of why those panic questions are great, because you can get in front of those those hardcore people who are searching for that. All right, let's go ahead and check out some deliverables. So Dan, do you want to tell just really quick on how your process works, once I hand a project over to you and you start looking at creating content for clients?
Yeah, definitely. So basically what I do when Michael hands a project, he usually gives like several great suggestions. I will just like dive into like the keywords that are important for them. Like for this client, I know that I was looking up sewing for beginners, all these kinds of things. And then when I was looking up sewing or sewing for beginners, it was like organizing your sewing space, which is huge for Arrow because they sell products that help you organize your sewing space. And they didn't have that on their blog just yet. So yeah, there you go. This is the outline that we created for them. We included, a title. It matches their tone. Their tone is kind of fun. They want to be like for the everyman, they're trying to just be lighthearted, friendly. We have internal linking recommendations to their product pages, to some of their older blog content that wasn't performing super well. We include, some research that we have from like Keyword Magic. And And then we start with, the introduction, what we want to cover. We include the H2s, H3s, etc. So like a lot of these H2s are just like questions that we found during our keyword research. So it's just like, how do I store my notions, or like, how do I declutter? How do I get rid of stuff? How do I create a like dedicated space for this? Like lots of this stuff you can literally find just doing, Ahrefs or SEMrush, like keyword research. Like the questions are all there. And then if you also like use that keyword research and then just put yourself in an empathetic position where you're like, what would I want? What are the questions that I would have if I were trying to create a dedicated room for this stuff? It's super easy to create an outline. And then this is the piece we ended up writing, which has done super, super well. And I know Michael's going to talk about the results shortly after, but this was a piece that was really great for them because we got to talk about all of their products. Like it was so like focused on what they can offer a consumer without being directly related to their product. So I think that's why it's worked out so well for them, which is why, getting creative and like doing the keyword research is so important, because again, like nobody wants to read a piece about like why, XYZ product is perfect XYZ sewer. But this makes sense. Like people are looking for it. They want to engage with it. It's proven in, like the search results. So this has been really great for them.
Awesome. So let's talk about the results. So number one is we were able to help them drive in Q4 of 2023, 1,320 visitors to their blog. So literally from 5 visitors in all of the 12 months previous to then 1,300 visitors in just 3 months. Though they were stoked, like we were stoked, like it was just incredible growth. We started publishing content on the 26th of September. Literally within a week, this content was already driving traffic. Like Google and people wanted this content so much, and we just gave it to them. And that's really what great SEO is at the end of the day. Find out what people are searching for, find out what they want, answer their questions well, and you'll get rewarded. What I love as well that we talked about their goal earlier, kind of that top of the funnel focus, while also helping out with sales and conversions. And we did a great job of that. We created a lot of top of the funnel content, like Danica mentioned earlier, the panic questions. Why does my sewing machine keep jamming? So we hit that type of topic. We then have kind of that maybe top of the funnel start to get more mid funnel, like best sewing machines for beginners. The top of the funnel, can I bring my sewing needle on an airplane? Then the mid funnel of sewing gifts ideas. One thing that I was super thrilled about is they had this article about what to know before buying your first sewing cabinet. We didn't even write this piece, but we internally linked to it. And we also, I feel like just the overall topical authority lift of the content that we created, this piece is now like the 3rd best performing content piece on their website. It's doing really well all of a sudden. And nothing changed other than we added some more content to the site that happened to have some internal links to this piece, and it started ranking better. And then we mentioned the ergonomic chair one. Again, if someone's searching for the phrase ergonomic sewing chair, that's actually got some buying intent behind it, and we were able to address that query with an informational article. So really cool examples of pieces that we're finding success. In terms of their primary keywords, they jumped up from number 15 to number 4 for the keyword sewing table. For sewing cabinets, their main keyword, for number 2 to number 1. Our content for best beginner sewing machine and sewing machines for beginners is ranking on page 1. And then sewing machine cabinets from number 3 to number 1. So even though we weren't building links to product pages or doing anything like that, these pages saw a lift because of the internal linking and overall topical authority that's being attributed to this site from the content that was created. So disclaimer, one thing that is very important on a content strategy that I want to leave you with is don't half-ass your content. As Ron Swanson says, never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing. And this is so true in that what I love about this client, again, was that we have a really great relationship with them. And we started out this project by building 10 article outlines per month for them. And very early on, they came to us and they said, hey, we're not going to be able to handle all this writing right away. What if instead of having you guys create 10 outlines, you just create 5 good articles each month for us? And this was a great communication between us and them, and we agreed with them and we jumped in. And sure enough, by cutting down the amount of content and instead really focusing on how much content we can do a great job on between their resources and and the budgets and everything, we did that. And it worked amazing. It got them the results they were looking for. So keep in mind, Google doesn't rank haphazard content with a few keywords in the headers, right? You have to demonstrate each. So Danica, one thing you mentioned that I thought was interesting as we were working on this project was that some of the competitor content was on kind of more like general, kind of like mommy blog tops type sites, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that's been so interesting about this project is, we're working in like the sewing space. So there's a lot of mom blogs. There's a lot of, I mean, I don't mean mom blogs to be derogatory or anything, but it's just a thing in the industry. So I think one of the things that has been so interesting about this project is, like we could look at like Singer, like an actual sewing brand that sells sewing machines doesn't have this content either.
Yeah.
So like a lot of what people are getting in this space is, they're getting results from mom blogs that are just like doing this themselves. So like when we have Arrow, who has, like a footprint in the industry, when they start making these like more top of the funnel like pieces, they're able to see results like almost immediately. It's like actually I think it freaked all of us out. Like we were surprised that it like ended up ranking this quickly. We're used to the like the SEO experience where like it might take a few months for it's to show up. This happened immediately for them, because they just did the top of the funnel stuff. Like some of the mid funnel stuff is already ranking. Like we were very surprised. And I think it's because they're in an industry where nobody's doing SEO the way that they should. And
Exactly.
they're starting to do it, and they've seen amazing results already.
Yeah, and I think that's really like it fits so well with what Google's been talking about when it comes to eat is like if Google has to pick for a sewing related article, a brand that sewing is what they do, that's their passion, that's their expertise, versus a mom blog that talks about all kinds of subjects, and then sewing was just one thing that they did a project on. Like Google's going to trust the brand that that's what they are and that's what they do, 9 times out of 10 now. So they really position themselves well in a niche in an industry where their direct competitors and brands in that space aren't doing what they should be from a content strategy. It just gave our clients such a good competitive advantage, and we helped them capture that and tap into that. The next thing here is don't just throw it at AI. We had another project that we worked on a while back where we made what I thought were just great outlines and they literally spelled it out for them on what they needed to do. They took our outlines, plugged them into Chat GPT, and then published the article. And guess what? It didn't rank, and I wouldn't expect it to. So don't do that. And the last thing I want to say here is not every piece needs to be 2,000 words long. Some are going to be 800, some are going to be 1,500, some are going to be 2,000. It's going to run the gamut, but you need to cover the subject matter thoroughly. And what you create should roughly stack up to what the competitors are doing and what they're looking like. If a subject is being consistently covered by competitors at 2,000 words, a 500-word blog post probably isn't covering that topic thoroughly enough. We know that this stuff works, and in your own content efforts, if you take the time to really study these things out, do the research, and follow the basic SEO best practices, but really outside the SEO, just understanding your audience, their challenges, that's gonna take you so much along the way of being successful here. Dan, any finishing thoughts on your end before we close this out?
Oh, you know me. I could talk for 7 hours about this whole thing, but I really think just like Michael already said, you have to think about user questions before you think about Google. Like it's a weird, unfortunate sometimes marriage, but if you think of users, Google will follow, like Google's going to change their guidelines all the time, but if you're thinking about user intent first and starting from that perspective, it's hard to not be successful. So start from that place and then think about the SEO benefits afterwards.
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for checking out the video and hanging out with us. Again, if you have any questions about your projects or what you're working on, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to take a look at this with you. And if you need help, whether it's strategy, outline creation, actually writing the content, earning backlinks to promote your content, we'd love to hop in and help you. But we just thought this was a fun opportunity today to show you how, we helped a client and how you can go from literally driving nobody to your website to driving thousands of visitors to your website all the time. So thank you so much, and we hope this was helpful to you, and we'll connect with you soon.